trouble in the London area, and 23, 24 across eastern parts of Scotland. Friday we'll see the peak of the heat as the high moves east. Even hotter air wafts up from the continent. 33, 34 possible in the southeast, but starting to turn cooler from the north. A bit of uncertainty about when the cool air arrives in the south, but certainly changes through the weekend with the risk of some showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, everybody, no spin, no bias, no censorship. It's Dan Wootton tonight with me, Patrick Christie's. And breaking tonight as well, despite legal challenges that have removed more migrants from the plane, the first flight to Rwanda is set to take off this evening. Our reporter Jeff Moody is live by the runway and we'll be keeping across the very latest developments throughout the show. We're making plane spotting cool this evening, people, I'm telling you that much. Anyway, its presumptive departure will be taking place despite the best efforts, of course, of the Church of England and even reportedly Prince Charles, for goodness sake. But I'll explain why this country's institutions, which are supposed to be politically neutral, need to cut down on this virtue signalling nonsense in my digest coming up very, very shortly. And raring to respond will be my superstar panel, former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Kelvin Robinson and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. GB News presenter Darren Grimes will also be on hand, a little bit of grime time, you love to see it, to provide his take on the Rwanda developments. And of course, he's tonight's outsider, and that is at 9:25. Plus, as the author and historian even, Leo McKinstry accuses human rights lawyers of being politically motivated. Is he right that by blocking Rwanda flights, they are actually subverting democracy? We're going to debate that at 10 p.m. As the UK marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falklands as well, important story this. Have we treated our veterans with the respect that they deserve? I don't think so. This issue matters a lot to the iconic British comedian Jim Davidson, who entertained the troops during the conflict. He'll be here alongside Falklands veteran Denzel Connick at 9:35. And it's an art form that's been around for centuries. But after images circulate online of drag queens performing with children, yes, that's right, drag queens performing with children, should we be telling them to sashay away from our young people? Really interested to hear your thoughts on this in the clash at 9:45. And I'll also hold court with two of this country's feistiest drag queens, RuPaul's Drag Race UK star Sherry Valentine and, of course, the author and journalist Laura Dodsworth. After the North Yorkshire town of Whitby as well bans second homeowners buying up new properties, should other areas in the UK follow suit? And as well, as if there isn't enough going on, those Just Stop Oil eco-loonies, well, they're back at it, aren't they? They're back out and about. And this time, they're attacking the Treasury. Is there no end to their absolute menace? We'll bring you both of those stories in our Media Buzz at 10:30 p.m. Plus, after Virgin Atlantic become the first UK airline to allow staff to display tattoos, could this mean for your next flight attendant? What do you think about that? Is it classy? Is it demeaning? We'll find out. Anyway, that's right. I'll be meeting the groundbreaking tattooed performer, Lizard Man, right? Check him out. He is, believe it or not, well, not believe it or not, you better believe it. You can see him, a lot of you, unless you're watching on radio. He's the UK's most tattooed man, and he wants to see a destigmatisation of all things body art. I think we maybe have a different definition of art there, but we'll get stuck into all of that. Don't miss that at 10:20 p.m. Plus, an announcement earlier today, Nicola Sturgeon is trying to scheme her way towards a second independence referendum, hasn't she?
After everything that has happened, Brexit, COVID, Boris Johnson, it is time to talk about independence and then to make the choice.
Yes, well, there we go. Journalist and spokesperson for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, John Ferry, is having none of Sturgeon's pity party. That's right, good to see it. Anyway, we'll bring you analysis of the First Minister's bombshell announcement in Uncancelled, and that, ladies and gents, is at 10:40. You'll also get a first look at tomorrow's newspapers as they drop, and as ever, I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go, people.
Thank you, Patrick. The top stories on GB News tonight. The European Court of Human Rights has issued an order preventing the deportation of one Iraqi migrant to Rwanda. They'll now stay in the UK until after the judicial review of the government's policy in July. For those of you watching on television, we're showing live pictures right now of the deportation plane waiting at MOD Boscombe Down in Wiltshire. The first flight now carrying, we think, 6 asylum seekers, scheduled to take off sometime this evening. That's down from a planned 130 asylum seekers. However, the charity Care for Calais says the remaining deportees could also make similar claims to the European Court before that plane takes off. Well, earlier, senior UK judges dismissed attempts to introduce an injunction to stop the flight. The court's president said if the government's policy is found to be unlawful, migrants will be brought back to the UK, and asked if it was time to come out of the European Convention on Human Rights in order to see through the government policy. The Prime Minister said some laws may need to be changed.
The legal world is very good at picking up ways of trying to stop the government from upholding what we think is a sensible law. Will it be necessary to change some laws to help us as we go along? It may very well be, and all these options are under constant review.
We'll be keeping an eye on that story for you throughout the night, but for the moment, other news. And Scotland's First Minister says there's now an indisputable mandate for a second referendum on Scotland's independence from the United Kingdom. Speaking in Edinburgh, Nicola Sturgeon said it would allow for a wealthier, fairer and more resilient nation, adding people in her country are suffering from many implications of a Brexit they didn't vote for. Scotland previously held a referendum in 2014 on this issue, with 55% of the country voting against independence. But Ms Sturgeon says the country is more prepared now than it was then. The Foreign Secretary says the EU has absolutely no reason to retaliate against the government's plans to override the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's threatened legal action if the changes go ahead. Ireland's Foreign Affairs Minister, Simon Coveney, warned it could destabilise peace in Northern Ireland. But the government claims the new rules will make it easier for goods to get there from Britain. Tonight in London, several hundred people have taken part in a silent walk to mark the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire. That comes after the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge joined survivors and bereaved relatives, laying a floral tribute to the 72 people who lost their lives in the blaze. And earlier today, the names of all 72 victims were read out at a memorial service at Westminster Abbey. And a 72-second silence was observed at a shopping centre in West London. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, where now it's time to go back to Dan Wootton Tonight with Patrick.
Thank you, Polly. Now, all this hoo-ha about whether the Rwanda deportation flight takes off is symptomatic of how people want to make this country ungovernable. And, in my opinion, it's a classic case of needless white guilt. The worst thing that we can do is give in to them, because it won't stop here, will it? No. Once people know that you can mob up and surround a deportation van, and if you shout enough abuse at the police, then they'll let the deportee go. Then they're going to keep on doing it, aren't they? If people know that if they shout and scream outside a courtroom, then judges might give in, well, then they'll keep doing it, won't they? If people know that all they have to do is call someone like you a racist, and then you'll keep your personal views about borders and mass immigration to yourself, then they'll keep calling you a racist, won't they? The Church of England should be very careful, in my opinion. Getting involved in politics is a deviation from its basic function and core principles. And in a country where Christianity appears to be dwindling, may I politely suggest that I don't think that's the best idea. Prince Charles is reported to have privately come out against the Rwanda deal, though his people insist, of course, that he remains politically neutral. Yeah, all right. I feel as though he's foregoing the support of his core royalist patriotic base in a bid to appeal to a younger, more woke generation. But it won't work. In fact, I have some news for Prince Charles, especially when it comes to his climate change stuff. The woke brigade won't be happy with you until you've turned Buckingham Palace into a homeless shelter. So crack on at your peril. Campaigners don't want the flight to take off because they believe in a hyper-multicultural society that would smash down traditional cultural norms, ethnic identities and communities, which would erode the very fabric of our society to an irreversible extent. It's some desperate bid to outdo each other on how non-racist we can all be. Do you not think there's a huge irony here with this Rwanda stuff? People are saying that this policy makes Britain racist, but they're the same people who've been saying that we're a racist country for absolutely ages. They don't think that Pakistani immigrants, for example, talk to other people back home in Pakistan. The Bangladeshis, Africans, Syrians. Well, of course they do. And they've been doing it for generations now. And clearly, they have all come to the conclusion that the UK is not a racist country. Because whenever you see an interview with someone who's trying to come here, it's because they've heard that they can have a better life. I can't help but feel like a lot of the Rwanda protest stuff is just a relatively small number of white people getting offended on behalf of ethnic minorities. A lot of them, by the way, will be the same people who will move out of London or a big city as soon as they have kids, meaning that their children will grow up surrounded by fewer ethnic minorities. It's absolutely laughable, isn't it? I am personally for small government and libertarianism for the most part as well, and I thought that the coronavirus laws were obviously deeply wrong and egregious, which deserve to have massive protests. It's interesting, though, isn't it? I didn't see many lawyers queuing up to defend those who were clobbered with ridiculous fines. I don't really remember charity groups trying to stand up for the rights of elderly people locked away in their own homes to rot away in their final days. But because this issue is supposedly about race, then we'll just give in, won't we? And then just have a look at most of the people doing most of the protesting. And you'd look me in the eye and you honestly tell me that it isn't just a load of virtue-signalling nonsense based around some bizarre sense of inherited guilt. Anyway, of course, those are my views. You can get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Relatively strong stuff to start the show, ladies and gentlemen, but let's not mess about, OK? And to respond to that now is my superstar panel. Former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star is the wonderful Dawn Neeson. We've got Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and, of course, author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Thank you, all of you, for joining me tonight. We always work it, well, I always work it from left to right, although not politically in this case, it must be said. Dawn, we'll start with you. What do you make of all of that? Do you think there is a lot of kind of, I don't know, maybe white guilt or virtue signalling taking place when it comes to the Rwanda stuff?
Actually, I agree there is an element of racism here.
Oh, here we go.
But it's racism on behalf of the people that are having a go at Rwanda. It's it's like, oh my God, Africa, what a hellhole. That is what the implication is. Have any of them actually ever been to Rwanda? And in 2017, Patrick, a global poll proved one of the most welcoming countries for immigrants in the entire world. It came third, was Rwanda.
Right.
So what's suddenly changed? The BBC in a website earlier this year was saying one of the most welcoming countries for travellers in Africa was Rwanda. That's mysteriously disappeared from their website all of a sudden.
Gosh, that's gone, hasn't it?
I know, isn't it
Wow,
strange?
it's almost like there's an agenda here, isn't it?
Well, this is it. I mean, this is all about politics. It's not about the migrants. It's not about the people of Rwanda who are as upset by this as we are. It's like, well, hold on a minute. So it's about the human rights lawyers and politics.
OK, Calvin, I'll skip you just for a second. Sorry,
It's all right.
I'll make sure you feel heard. But I'd just like to nip to you, Rebecca, because I suspect maybe you've got a different view.
Yeah, do you know what? I've been doing this for nearly a year now, and that was the most offensive monologue I've heard since I've been doing this show.
Why?
I found that really deeply objectionable.
About what exactly then?
Because I think what's happened is I think you might maybe have forgotten that these are actual real people. And if one of them was sitting on the sofa with you saying, I was trying to build a life here, I've got a cousin here, I got a job in a shop, I really, really felt like I had something, would you really want to look them in the eye and go, yeah, no, Rwanda, sorry, bye?
Well, if they came here illegally, then there are laws and there are rules in place, aren't there? And if they've broken those...
But the reason people come illegally... Sorry, the reason some people come illegally is because it is too hard to come legally. Some people come illegally...
To this country, but there's no war in France, is there?
But if you don't speak French and you don't know anybody in France, why would you stay in France?
Well, from what I can see, I've been to some of these migrant hotels and they all conspicuously didn't speak a word of English when I started to ask them questions.
But why would you want to stay in France? If you have family in England, if you have a cousin here, if you have connections with here, if you've grown up watching English TV, why would you not want to be in a country that you had some connection with?
Well, I'd like to go to the moon. I think the moon looks cool, but I can't, you know?
That's not for the same reasons.
Well, I'm sorry, but I just don't quite understand.
Because you're not a qualified astronaut would be my main objection to that.
Yeah, but you've not passed the asylum test or the immigration test if you want to come to this country and you're going to get deported.
But presumably because you don't have the resources to do so, because that's expensive and you need to be educated and you need certain abilities to do that. And some people don't have that money and that time or that ability. But that doesn't mean they don't deserve a chance at a better life.
Well, it costs rather a lot to pay people smugglers, though, doesn't it? But, Calvin, I'll move on to you. What's your view on all of this?
I find it fascinating that the bishops in the Church of England cannot agree on the resurrection, they cannot agree on the virgin birth, they cannot agree on what's necessary for our salvation, but they can unanimously agree to oppose Conservative government policy on issues like Rwanda, climate change and Brexit.
Can I ask you a really inflammatory question?
They've become far too political.
I'll give you a chance. Let him finish and I'll give you a chance. It's all right. Go on, Calvin.
It's clearly an echo chamber. It's clearly a political groupthink, which is dangerous, and they need some diversity of thought and opinion, and they seem very afraid of that. And they're not doing their job, which is to, they're moralising things like the vaccine, but they're not moralising their faith. They've got it back to front.
OK, inflammatory question time.
Do you think Jesus would be pro the Rwanda thing?
Absolutely. You know why? Yes, absolutely. Because people are crossing the channel illegally and dangerously with people smugglers and potentially at risk of death when there's no need for that at all. And what we can do is process their asylum claims in a safe country where they'll be welcomed.
Do you think that's what will actually happen?
Yes.
Do you think it will be well handled?
And I think it will act as a deterrent and it will stop people going into these horrible gangs that are exploiting.
Safe and a deterrent.
So the bottom line with this, it's got to... What we're trying to do is stop people risking their lives crossing the channel. That is the bottom line. That's what everybody wants. Prince Charles, the Church, all of us. Surely everybody wants that. So we have to come up with something that is a deterrent. And so far, nobody has.
No.
Nobody in the entire world
But then
has
if
a
it's
solution
so
to
nice
this
in
problem.
Rwanda, why is it a deterrent?
Because of the geography of it, isn't it? That's the thing.
So then it can't be that nice of a place. I don't think we can say both Rwanda's a lovely opportunity and it's a deterrent.
Somewhere being safe and nice isn't the same as somewhere having the same benefit structure and some welfare state. There's clearly a magnet, there's clearly a sponge to this country.
For a lot of people, it's that they already have family
That's
here
not good
or
enough.
friends
Sorry, that's good enough. You can't just say, I want to do that, and then you can do it. You can't break the law to do what you want to do. There's a process.
We all
because
do
you
it all
can't.
the time.
No, you cannot choose.
You break the law Lord to do?
Well, I say on TV.
Well, there you go.
Just disobey the law because you
People
want to.
do. People speed. People watch TV illegally.
It's like being in
People do
M&S and
all
saying, I
sorts of
want that
things.
chocolate bar, just taking it.
But
no,
it
you can't.
makes
You have to pay for it.
But if I was starving, it would be perfectly morally
They're not starving in
reasonable.
France, are they?
Oh, hang on a minute.
miserable in France.
this is
I'm
a
not saying they are,
But
but-
this is a key point of contention, isn't it, actually? Because do you actually believe that, let's say I had a baby and I couldn't afford nappies for that baby, then I would be morally right?
Yeah, I do have a baby, and I would steal absolutely anything I needed for her, 100% without a second thought.
Okay. What about if I just couldn't? I was hungry. I couldn't afford food. You think it's fine for someone to go and steal that food from a shop?
Yeah, from Sainsbury's, I wouldn't feel bad. I wouldn't judge you at all.
Okay. Right. Fair enough. I mean, the law would, though, wouldn't it?
Earrings from Claire's Accessories, maybe.
Fair enough, yeah. But then isn't that why it's a bit of a slippery slope? Because there are safe places that they can go in mainland Europe, and maybe England is the earrings from Claire's Accessories.
So after the war, a lot of Jewish people didn't just stay in the first place they were able to be safe. They kept moving because they wanted to go somewhere that they could have a life and where they had connections, often where they spoke the language. We don't judge that retrospectively because it was correct. So if we believe that people are actually in dire straits, we should respect that.
Okay, come back to that,
legal. It was also legal. The Jewish people that came here after the Second World War, it was legal
But
migration.
people were better about
That is the
taking.
huge difference. No, that is the difference.
These young men coming over in the boats are economic migrants. They are not all asylum seekers.
Then
They're
what
not
should
all
they do?
refugees.
If you can't afford to do the process with all the forms legally, and you
We see
are
them
in a
throw-
terrible
No.
situation...
We see them throwing their mobile phones in the sea on their way over.
But, so
They
what
are
would you do if you
purposefully
were...
averting our system.
But you're a very intelligent, ambitious man. If you were living in a place where you couldn't have a career, what would you do?
What do you mean?
If you couldn't, if you were living in a country like Syria...
If I wanted to live in another country, and I don't because this is the best country in the world, but if I did, I'd apply to live there.
Okay, good point to finish. And can I just say as well, I must actually say that, you know, Rebecca, it's been the first time that I've had you on the show, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far, by the way.
Me too, it's
and
fun.
I like a bit of back and forth.
Dan's getting too soft.
I know that you don't know me too well, but I like a bit of this kind of stuff. So good stuff anyway. Okay, we've got Rebecca Reed there, of course, author and journalist, the wonderful Calvin Robinson, Conservative commentator on the panel, as well as Dawn Neeson as well. So, right, stay tuned, everybody. We've got loads and loads and loads coming your way, because as the UK marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falklands, have we treated our veterans with the respect that they deserve? Now, I put that to Falklands veteran Denzel Connick, one of Britain's best-loved comedians as well, who's going to be joining us, and a veteran charity founder in the shape of Jim Davidson. They will be joining me at 9:35, so not long now. But next, the first flight to Rwanda, very on topic, ladies and gentlemen, is on the runway. There you go. And I'll cross live to GB News reporter Jeff Moody, who's standing by, plus Darren Grimes, bit of grime time, you'll love to see it. We'll break down this pivotal day for the government and Britain's immigration policy, and frankly, what it means if it doesn't all go smoothly. Don't you dare go anywhere.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Tomorrow we'll bring more of the same, more strong sunshine for most of us, a little bit warmer than today. And again, the UV and grass pollen levels are likely to be high. It's not going to be dry and sunny everywhere. However, we've still got some rain across the northwest. That'll continue on and off overnight across the Highlands, the Northern Isles and the Western Isles. But elsewhere, we will keep largely clear skies. Rural spots could drop down to single figures, but mostly we're looking at 10 or 11 to start Wednesday. And we'll start with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales, and many will stay that way throughout. A bit more cloud again for the west coast of Scotland. Rain at times over the Western Isles and spreading into the Highlands. We may even see one or two showers for Northern Ireland, but few and far between here. Most of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland's brighter and warmer than today, and certainly further south in the sunshine, temperatures ticking up by a few degrees. 28 is possible in the London area. As always, coasts will be a little bit cooler where we see some sea breezes developing. A balmy evening to come then through Wednesday evening, staying fine and dry for the vast majority. Just a threat of one or two showers for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Certainly we'll keep some outbreaks of rain going in the far northwest, but otherwise a dry and fine start to what will be an even warmer day for many of us on Thursday. Again, still some cloud for western Scotland, perhaps a bit more for Northern Ireland. A bit of patchy rain trickling in here at times, but for most places, dry, hazy, very warm, strong sunshine. Temperatures more widely across England and Wales into the mid-20s. 29 is possible in the London area, and 23, 24 across eastern parts of Scotland. Friday we'll see the peak of the heat as the high moves east. Even hotter air wafts up from the continent. 33, 34 possible in the southeast, but starting to turn cooler from the north. A bit of uncertainty about when the cool air arrives in the south, but certainly changes through the weekend with the risk of some showers.
Right, OK, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of developing stuff here. We're going to go now to cross over live to our southwest of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's at the MOD Boscombe Down ahead of the highly contested Rwanda deportation flight. And, Jeff, what's happening on the ground now? I understand there's been some movement.
There has indeed. Well, the plane arrived just after 10 a.m. this morning. The police have been on site trying to make sure that nothing could possibly go wrong. They have managed to succeed in that. There were some protesters who apparently lay down in the road for a little while, but they didn't stop all of the trucks and the vans arriving. The catering van has been loaded on board recently, and we've just heard a rumour as well that 6 people have been seen going up the steps onto the plane. So it does look like this is going to take off fairly soon. There was originally supposed to be 130 on board, but that's been whittled down to 7 this morning and then now to 6. Several appeals have been heard, as we've been reporting throughout the day. 4 of those appealed to the High Court. They had their case dismissed. 1 took their case to the Supreme Court. That was dismissed too. But another, and this is the interesting one, an Iraqi took his case to the Human Court of Human Rights. Now, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that he could stay in the UK until the judicial review, which is scheduled for next month. So he has won his case. And what is interesting about that is that there's nothing specific about his case that could only apply to him. What I mean by that is if any of the others want to take their case to the European Court of Human Rights, they're likely to succeed too. So even though we know that 6 of them are now getting on board, the plane hasn't taken off, and until the moment that the plane actually takes off, any of them could come back again. Well, as we know, the Prime Minister has been speaking today, defending this policy, saying, look, it really is necessary. It's the kindest thing to do. It's going to deter people from making that long and treacherous journey across Europe and then getting on these little dinghies and boats and coming across the Channel. As we know, there's been extraordinary loss of life in recent years, and the hope now is that policies like this will be able to deter that. But it's been controversial. The Church of England has been up in arms, saying that it's morally indefensible. If we believe the rumours, Prince Charles has been talking privately, saying that he believes it's morally wrong as well. But Boris Johnson says, look, it's going to happen. We're going to get on with it. We're going to make it work. And these are just teething problems. Well, we're expecting it to take off sometime in the next hour. But as I say, until we hear more from the European Court of Human Rights, we're not exactly sure how many people will be on it. 6 have got on board, but any number.
Was Jeff Moody there, who's on the scene for us as we essentially go plane spotting tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're desperately going to be bringing you the latest on whether or not that plane allegedly carrying the first group of people, however many of them they may be, to Rwanda on that very first deportation flight. We've had legal challenges, we've had public protests, we've had the Church of England coming out against it, we've allegedly had Prince Charles privately coming out against it as well. No doubt a whole host of celebrities and the usual lefty types. But you know what? It might actually be taking off. But someone whose career is definitely much taking off is Darren Grimes right now, GB News presenter, who joins us, I believe, live. Darren, thank you very much. Look, obviously, we're going to have to be a bit of a reactive show this evening, Darren. As you can imagine, there's a lot of shouting going on. Is the plane taking off? Is it not? We'll have to wait and see on that one. But how do you feel about the situation? It looks as though there might be 6 people on board.
Do you know what, Patrick? I think this, and I was just listening to what Jeff was saying there, if Brexit, to me, if Brexit is to mean anything at all, we've got to wrestle back control and hand it back to the British people, because right now, listening there to the European Court of Human Rights and all the other legal challenges to the actual deportation of those who've entered our country illegally, these are being used as the playthings of lawyers from fancy privileged homes in London, Patrick, right? Whilst the British people who keep voting, let's not forget, for parties that are committed to lowering migration to this country, for border controls, they keep being told, well, actually, your view, the ballot box, it doesn't mean out, Patrick, because actually what matters is those in privileged middle-class homes who manage to wrangle the legal profession. And that's where I think there is a fundamental argument here to be made, which is that this is legal, lefty legal lawyers versus the British people.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe you as well. And I can't help but notice, Darren, it does seem to be a lot of the same faces in the crowds and the mobs that you see outside these courtrooms and when you're seeing them trying to wrestle people out the back of a police detention van. And most of those, as far as I can see, Darren, appear to have quite white faces. Now, I just wonder whether or not it's a bit of virtue signalling.
Oh, God, 100%, Patrick. I mean, how many of these people holiday every week, summer, rather, in Saint-Tropez, for example, right? If France is so bad, why do they flock there for their wine, cheese, their sun, and all the rest of it every single year? Exactly, right? Why are these things so quite popular at this time of year as well, Patrick? Millions flying into France, for example, right now as we speak. I mean, the ultimate holiday destination, but it's not good enough for these migrants. They've got to come to Britain. They've got to be able to illegally enter our country. And they come here because it's the Holy Grail, right? It's the English language, it's a generous benefit system, it's a flexible labour market. But we've got, and you've documented this on your show week in, week out, Patrick, we've got problems in this country. We've got a severe housing crisis, right? Yep. You cannot see a GP for no love nor money. You cannot get your kid into the school that you want them to go to. Mental health services and all of these other things, cancer treatments, you cannot get access to the kind of services that we in this country should be serving.
Well, look, as you may have heard, I did a monologue earlier, and one of our wonderful panellists, Rebecca, was dead against it, as is her right to be, but she appears to be of the opinion anyway that if you want to go somewhere, you should just be allowed to go there. How would you respond to people who might say that about these people now who've decided, hey, I just don't fancy a bit of France, I just don't fancy a bit of Spain, Hungary gets too cold in the winter, I'm going to come to the land of milk and honey that is Great Britain?
Well, this is why we need the deterrent, right? 17 boats were clocked in 1 week of last year. That was 700 people, Patrick. 700 people in 1 week, right? We've got 700 people in this country that need help. Every single week that number is growing. It's a problem that's exacerbating because of the cost of living crisis. What I would say to people like Rebecca, and you're right, she's entitled to her view, but put that view to the British people, right? Put that view to the mercy of the ballot box. And I'm telling you right now, you will be roundly defeated. You will make Jeremy Corbyn's 2019 victory look like a landslide.
Well, and this is one thing I'm concerned about Prince Charles. As you know, I'm a royalist and I'm all in favour of the royal family and the monarchy continuing, and I think anyone who doesn't agree with that, frankly, is a bit of an idiot. But at the same time, as we are there watching, ladies and gentlemen, right now, that plane sitting on the tarmac, awaiting the people who are on board it, as we understand it, alongside a catering trolley to actually make those first tentative movements towards Rwanda. I can't help but feel worried about Prince Charles's future, Darren, because if he starts coming out and foregoing, in my opinion, the views of the vast majority of those people on the Mall, waving the Union Jacks, you know, saying, actually, I think privately, I think this is a disgrace. Well, then, I'm very sorry, but I think he's going to fall out of favour quickly because the woke lot aren't going to like him no matter what he does.
No, totally right, and good impression. But Patrick, do you know, in my view, he's about to go to Rwanda pretty shortly as head of the Commonwealth, future head of the Commonwealth anyway. And I actually think that this depicts quite a racist view of Rwanda, Patrick, because Rwanda, right, it's engaged in similar schemes with the European Union and others. Is the Prince of Wales and the likes of the lot we speak about often on this show, on Twitter and all of the other things, are they arguing that Rwanda's not good enough for people to go to, right? And that, to me, is a fundamentally racist view. What you are saying about Rwanda is that it's a backwater that's not good enough for illegal migrants to go to. It smacks of that colonialist view that these people supportedly sneer at.
Yeah, it's a backwater third world country, this, that and the other. But some people are arguing, Darren, that if we had more simple, easier routes to claim asylum into this country as opposed to essentially having to rock up on a beach in Dover, then maybe we wouldn't be in the position that we're in now. Does our current asylum policy encourage people to try to get here illegally?
No, look, I actually think that, again, that's an argument that goes back to the fundamentally undemocratic nature of this, because they are using unelected courts in Europe, right, to try and actually circumvent, to get around the ballot box and say that to hell with the views of the British people. I actually want mass migration to this country. I think these people, if you don't think that the asylum system in this country is fit for purpose, you make your case. We are a democratic nation, right? Yep. You make your case as to why Priti Patel has got it wrong, why her Rwanda policy is purportedly racist and all of these other things.
Or come up with a better one.
Put it to the mercy of the ballot box. Exactly.
Or come up with a better one.
Offer it.
Offer it to the people. Like, I completely agree with you, Darren. Just very quickly, because we're going to have to whiz on, my good man. But a lot of people are saying, in fact, Ed's just been in touch. GB Views of GB News, these have been absolutely flying in, people, as you can imagine. It's one of the biggest stories that we're witnessing right now unfold before our very eyes in that box that's just over there to my right on our TV screens. If you're listening on radio, it's a plane sitting there on the runway waiting to take off, anyway, supposedly, to Rwanda. But, Darren, lastly, Ed's been in touch. Hey, 150-odd people supposed to be on this plane, apparently 130, 150, down to about 6. He says that's a joke. Are people like you and I too happy about this flight, Darren?
No, I think it's got to be shown to actually deliver on what it's there to do, right? Its main objective is to deport a hell of a lot more people than it actually has. And now, as Jeff was saying in the last package there, the problem is that now every migrant will be able to point to this Iraqi that has been, taken off the flight and won't leave tonight and say, well, I don't have to leave as well. And it's just the sanctimonious screeching, Patrick, from the likes of Twitter and all of these lefty liberals. Can you imagine if an illegal migrant turned up in their spare room? They would clutch their pearls and run for the phone to call the police faster than you can say Waitrose.
Absolutely. Darren Grimes, good stuff as always, and I'm loving the shows that you're doing at the minute. Just give our viewers a cheeky reminder of when they are.
So 2 p.m, Patrick, Saturday and Sunday. Get involved, join me there.
Good stuff, Darren, mate. Well done. Fantastic stuff. Darren Grimes there. Right, well, coming up, is it appropriate for drag queens to be reading books to our kids? Let's be honest with you, during some of the videos that we've seen during Pride Month, it's not just books they've been reading to kids, it's not just reading they've been doing at all. In fact, RuPaul's Drag Race UK star Cherry Valentine and author and journalist Laura Dodsworth will be battling it out in the clash at 9:45. Let us know what you think. Do you think this Pride stuff's gone too far? I'm sure you've all seen quite shocking videos, really, of people, essentially fully grown men sometimes, wearing sex toys, dancing in front of very young children who often have this look on their face. OK, all right, let us know what you think, Dan at gbnews.uk, or tweet me using the handle at GBNews. There's also, for want of a better phrase, a poll up on this right now that you can vote in. But next, as the UK marks 40 years since the liberation of the Falklands, have we treated our veterans with the respect they deserve? I actually slept rough for 3 nights on the streets in Manchester, Leeds and London to try to raise awareness years ago now for the plight, really, of our homeless military veterans. But Denzel Connick, who lost a leg in the Falklands conflict, and comedian and campaigner, and I think it's fair to say favourite at this channel, Jim Davidson, will join me next. People, what's not to like? Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. I tell you what, it's been an absolute rip snorter of a show so far, hasn't it? And that's not changing any time soon. A first look at tomorrow's papers are coming up. But first, important stuff, this, ladies and gentlemen. It was 40 years ago today that occupying Argentine forces in the Falklands dramatically surrendered to the British, and not before time, frankly. Our heroes retook the overseas territory after 74 days of bloodshed that saw around 600 Argentinians and 400 British soldiers lose their lives. 4 decades on, and we remember all those who perished in the conflict, with memorial services taking place today across the country. Boris Johnson joined veterans, bereaved family members and senior defence figures at a service at Staffordshire's National Memorial Arboretum. After laying a wreath, he said the greatest tribute to those who died was that the Falkland Islands had since thrived in peace and freedom. But do we treat our actual military veterans, and not just those from the Falklands, of course, with the respect that they deserve? The Royal British Legion estimates there are a staggering 6,000 homeless ex-forces personnel just lining our streets at the moment. Well, let me bring in Falklands veteran Denzel Connick, severely damaged his right leg as well. When he was hit by a mortar round the day before the liberation, I actually saw you on the telly last night, Denzel, so it's great to have you on the show today, my good man. He's been joined by comedian Jim Davidson as well, who entertained the troops during the conflict and launched the British Forces Foundation in 1999 as well, I believe, as a massive friend of the channel as well. Look, I'm just going to start with you, actually, if that's all right, my good man, Denzel. I mean, look, do you think, broadly speaking, that we treat our veterans well enough in this country?
I don't think we really do. I was at the Menin Gate on Sunday, this Sunday gone, and I watched for the first time, in actual fact, the ceremony, which is done to remember all those poor souls that perished in the First World War, millions of them. And then not too long after that, we had the Second World War. And then after that, we had many more, of course, including the Falklands and more recently Afghanistan. You know, we've had, probably in this country, more experience in dealing with veterans than probably any other country in the world. And yet, we're behind the curve with quite a number of other countries. We need to be doing more. It should be a government-led thing and not done all the time by charities that's picking up the pieces for all these servicemen and women.
Very disjointed charities as well, a lot of the time, Denzel. In my own personal experience, I found that out, unfortunately, to my peril, really. I was sleeping rough in London, Leeds and Manchester 3 nights in a row. I was just trying to raise money for general... I was trying to get the Military Forces Covenant actually enacted with housing and mental health care, etc. Yeah. And goodness gracious me, you know, it was, I can honestly say it's one of the most depressing moments of my career, because you should never start a campaign you don't already know you're going to win. And, goodness, I mean, I got a couple of weeks into it and realised I was going nowhere with this, and it made me feel awful because of the very serious nature of it. But Jim, I'll bring you in, my good man. Let's just lighten it a little bit before we get sort of back into the serious stuff. You entertained the troops, didn't you, during the conflict? What was that like?
Well, actually, it wasn't in the conflict. It was afterwards. I'd started a new conflict down there with people laughing. I went down there. I waited for Denzel and his mob to come home first before I went. I've actually been to the Falklands 7 times, and I wanted to go back again this year, but they said, Jim, actually, we'd rather have the Argentinians back. So I'm here talking to you, Patrick.
Good stuff, Jim. Thank you very much for that. But look, on a serious note, why do you care so much, Jim? Why have you gone out of your way to try to help the veterans community?
Well, you just got to look at that bloke next to me here, Denzel. He's a star. He's a hero of every person I know in show business, and not fit to tie his bootlaces, or actually to be his bootlace, to be more precise. But someone said to me ages ago, stick with the winners, and I was lucky enough to be invited to entertain the troops a long, long while ago, and I just find them all stars. And yes, Denzel's right. A lot more could be done. We have improved veteran welfare quite a bit in the last, the guys that are coming back now suffering from various illnesses. People talk about PTSD, and Denzel's the first one to tell you that you have to be careful with those letters, because sometimes it cloaks more serious mental illness than just, trauma. But there should be more to be done. Denzel and I have spoke a lot about this. We've just recorded a series called Pull Up a Sandbag, where Denzel is interviewing other veterans. And all of us believe there should be a dedicated veterans minister.
Yes.
I know Johnny Mercer had a little stab at it, but he said it's like climbing up a greasy pole.
This is it, isn't it?
There needs to be a really serious go and someone to say, this is how we're going to do it. Not, as you say, all the charities fighting with one another.
Yeah, Denzel, I mean, I think you can tell a lot about a country by the way they treat their veterans, and I bang on about this all the time. We've not just got obviously issues with PTSD, but also some issues that go along with it as well. Homelessness, general mental health issues. Tragically, a lot of the time that can lead to things like alcoholism, potentially drug abuse as well, as is relatively natural if you find yourself thrust into those kind of desperate situations. Of course, we had retrospective historic prosecutions of people as well. We've got a real problem with our veterans. Do you think our country... Well, no, let me rephrase that. Why should anyone join the military? Why should anyone join the military now?
Well, it does surprise a lot of us, and yet still we have a lot of people crossing the thresholds of recruiting offices and doing just that. My own children have done that, even whilst knowing what happened to their own father, and yet they still enlisted. Which goes to show the caliber of the young people that do in fact join the armed forces.
Okay.
And when they get broke during their service, it's really up to the government to make sure that they fix these things. And I'm not just talking about purely the mental health. There's an awful lot more that surrounds that, which does impinge on mental health, and that's for having the basics in life, like a roof over your head, a job, some pride. And if we can talk about pride, and don't forget, our service people are probably the proudest people in this country. They're the ones that've given up a lot for this country. And even still, we still have this it is getting better, as Jim said. It is getting better, but I'm afraid we've still got an awful long way to go.
Yeah, just very quickly, Denzel, sorry, because I know we were a bit pressed for time here, which is a shame, actually, but it's my fault for banging on about something else earlier on in the show. But what was your first thoughts, Denzel, when you set foot on the Falkland Islands?
Bloody cold. No.
Fair enough. Yeah. That was quick, and I imagine quite direct enough. But go on. You just explain.
I kept wet feet right up until the end when I just had one wet foot. But no, seriously, the Falkland Islands are British, and they always have been. Yes, there's been lots of squabbling over it 200-300 years ago between a variety of different countries. But it was the United Kingdom and people from the United Kingdom that actually settled the islands properly. There's no indigenous population there before.
Yeah.
And those people were in trouble when they were invaded by, and don't forget this, a dictatorship, a cruel regime that was habitually killing their own people that they thought were going against their wishes. So at the end of the Falkland War, the Falkland Islands got their precious islands back, and Argentina gained a democracy of sorts, and it should be the end of the matter. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of saber rattling and what have you.
There is a lot. There is a lot, and there's a lot of questions.
I know a lot of people say, it's about time we all moved on. But you can't really move on when these things keep haunting behind you. The last thing I ever want to see is the government of this country allow those islands to go.
Exactly.
Certain people will have that in mind. I think there was a certain man with initials JC, not Jesus Christ either.
Well, no, he certainly wasn't. No. And I'm going to have to cut in, I'm afraid, just because I'm going to start getting quite severely shouted at. Jim, I'm not going to ask you another question apart from a bit of a yes and no. Would it be possible, Jim, sorry to leave you sitting there for so long, maybe you and I could think of a way of teaming up a bit and doing something more on veterans right here on GB News? Would you be up for that?
Absolutely.
Good lad. All right, Jim. Look, thank you so much, both of you. You're both absolute inspirations. Lovely to have you on the show. And Jim, you do occasionally email into us as well. Don't think I haven't noticed that. Falklands veteran Dental Connick as well, who's been sadly, obviously, of course, lost his left leg, was badly injured, fighting for Queen and country in the Falkland Islands. Jim Davidson, national treasure in his own right, of course, entertained the troops after the conflict and launched the British Forces Foundation in 1999. Chaps, thank you so much. Right, gosh, coming up, as attempts to delay the Rwanda plan's takeoff continue, even in the past few hours, are lefty lawyers trying to subvert democracy, really on the side of the people traffickers? I personally think they are. I'll put that to my panel in the media buzz. But also coming up, we're going to get to this sharpish, is it appropriate for drag queens to be reading books and indeed performing in front of children? I'm all in favour of a good drag show. I'll go to a few myself, but do the kids need to see it? Anyway, this comes after calls for Drag Queen Story Hour to sashay away. But anyway, here to lip sync for their points of view are RuPaul's Drag Race UK star Cherry Valentine and author and journalist Laura Dodsworth. They join me in the clash. Well, we're a few minutes over. Hopefully very soon. Let us know what you think. Dan at gbnews.uk. I'll see you shortly, people.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's time now for The Clash. Now, is drag an art form? Is drag an art form? That's what I want to know. It's maybe been around for centuries, has it? But are performers better known for their risque performances, their blue humour, their provocative outfits? And is that appropriate for children? Well, it's a question facing parents following the arrival, of course, of the new so-called Drag Queen Story Hour in the UK. It launched stateside in 2015. It was set up to, quote, inspire a love of reading while teaching deeper lessons on diversity, self-love and an appreciation of others. But in recent days as well, there's also been outrage, hasn't there, over footage coming out of Dallas, which has prompted lawmakers in Texas and Florida to call for a ban on bringing children to drag shows. Well, campaigners, of course, are now calling for the event, which is returning next month for a nationwide tour, to be banned outright. And they don't think this kind of thing would ever fly in Britain. Well, last year, Redbridge Central Library apologised after one drag artist turned up, you're not going to want to miss this one, ladies and gentlemen, dressed as a rainbow monkey bearing a fake bare buttocks and brandishing an actual sex toy. Yes, that's right. That actually happened. Anyway, but what do you think? Are drag queens appropriate for children? Well, let me know your thoughts. Email in right now, dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews and vote in our poll. while you're there as well. I'll bring you the results very, very shortly. But doing battle on this, not before time as well, is Cherry Valentine, star of hit TV show RuPaul's Drag Race UK, and author and journalist Laura Dodsworth. Cherry, I'll start with you. Thank you very much, especially for coming into the studio, sashaying your way in, some would say. But
you are very welcome.
Yes, so look, should people like you be performing in front of kids?
I think that's a really silly question, to be honest.
I get that a lot.
Like, when you mentioned just about the monkey and the person being dressed as a monkey, that's completely irrelevant to the whole picture. I mean, we don't talk. You didn't mention anything about children actually getting something good from drag.
What do they get from it?
Well, I've just done a tour over the last 3 months and met thousands of children under 18, and all of them were there and absolutely loved every second of it. And their parents were there and they enjoyed every moment and said how much it helped their children feel like they could become themselves a bit more. There's so much good in it, and I think it's difficult to just focus on the bad. We can't just pick out a minority inside a minority and make it the whole thing, you know?
No, hey, fair enough, Laura. I'll lob it over your way now. Laura Dodsworth, of course, author and journalist. Look, some of the videos coming out of Dallas are shocking, but I do believe that what Cherry's saying there is that's an extreme example, and we shouldn't be focusing on those things.
Yeah, no, it is an extreme example, and I don't think we can confuse that really bizarre scene of children going to quite an explicit drag show in an adult venue with libraries and education. I think the question to ask is, do drag queens have a vital role in helping children learn to read and love stories? Because while children might be able to get something from drag, Cherry's just talked about some benefits. Is reading, our libraries, the place? Is there a different format? I mean, I think overall as a society, we are very open-minded and tolerant. And I'm all in favour of encouraging people to be open-minded about gender non-conformity and different sexualities. And, lots of people take their kids to the pantomime at Christmas. And, the Danes are, I guess, a type of drag queen. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but, that's kind of how it looks to me. There's a similarity there. But drag queens, at least the ones I've seen, it feels a bit more like it's kind of evening entertainment. There can be innuendo and adult themes. And also there's, elements of the costume that you could arguably say present kind of a sexist view of womanhood. I think there's a lot of confusion at the moment about sex and gender. And I think maybe when it comes to teach children to read, perhaps it could just be about the basics of reading.
Laura, absolutely.
Can I just say one more thing? Say one more thing, Patrick? Because you mentioned the guy that was referred to as the rainbow dildo butt monkey.
Yes, I remember. I think we all remember that guy. Yes.
But there was also another example. Glencoates Primary School in Paisley in Scotland invited a drag queen called Flo Job to read stories to children. And while I don't think anything inappropriate happened in the classroom, actually this is somebody who has a very sexual social media feed, and that was all over the media too. So things do go wrong.
All right, Laura, I'm going to come back to you, Laura. Laura, I'm going to come back to you. Absolutely fair enough. I know there's a lot to get stuck into here. Cherry, thank you for sitting there so patiently with that. There's a lot for you to come back on there. I suppose, can I just ask this? Now, this is certainly not something I mean myself. I'm just asking this genuinely because this is what a lot of people might say. Some people might say is it forcing some kind of homosexuality onto kids or something like that? That's one of the things that a lot of the more conservative, especially Americans, would say.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an absolute outrageous idea, to be honest, that drag forces people to be a homosexual. And like she's just mentioned, sex and gender are completely different things. They really are. Sex, like myself, I can only go off my own opinions, but I'm a man. That's my sex. But my gender is so fluid, and sometimes I feel more feminine, sometimes I feel more masculine. And I think drag allows people, and especially children when they're growing up, to really just help them navigate it all, because we are being thrown things like phrases, we're being thrown new words constantly all the time. And I think, I'm also a qualified mental health nurse.
Right.
So I wouldn't class myself as a sexual person in drag. I just use it for artistic reasons. I use it for self-expression, to play with gender, to really question what we think is like how we should be in a society. So children ask me all the time things about mental health because of my mental health background, and I'm more than happy to talk to them about that.
Have you ever had any bad reactions, Cherry?
No, I haven't. No, not from children or parents that I've been with, but I have heard from other people that they have had bad reactions. I've obviously had homophobic attacks and all stuff like that, because it is very common still. whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah, Laura, OK. You mentioned something there that I thought was interesting. I'd not given it too much thought myself, I think, for obvious reasons. But you said that potentially sometimes there are elements of drag that could be deemed offensive to women. What is that? Is it over-stereotypical in your view? What do you mean by that?
I think that, there's so many different ways to take it. It's fun, it's a performance, it's a kind of very heightened expression of a particular type of femininity. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily offensive to women, but it does definitely play into gender stereotypes in a way that is sexism. So I think that the idea of using drag to talk about gender non-conformity is useful, but you can't then also ignore the fact that it plays into sexist stereotypes. I just think it's all really complex. And I'm not sure that the time when you're encouraging children to learn to read and to love stories is the time to also bring in all of this complexity. I do want to very much echo what Cherry just said. I don't think children seeing drag queens is going to make them go gay. Your sexuality is your sexuality. But there is an awful lot of confusion about gender. There's kind of crazy stuff going on in schools at the moment, to do with toilets and changing rooms and,
all sorts of names, etc. Yeah, gosh.
Yeah, and you can't really escape a lot of the furore about transgender ideology. And I just think perhaps story time should be kept simple. And I think a lot of people don't really see the need for this. I think we have to be careful because there are examples where things have happened that are just inappropriate. I mean, it's kind of horrific to think about somebody waving a Technicolor dildo around in a library to children who went along for a story time. Some serious mistakes were made. And while those are isolated examples, we've seen more of it in the United States. I think it's an American export we want to be a little bit careful about.
OK. I'm presuming that, Cherry, if it was banned here in this country, I suppose, any kind of drag out towards kids, would you protest over that ban, just quickly?
Would I protest? I'd share my personal opinion.
OK. All right. Look, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate both of you coming on the show. Cherry Valentine there, of course, star of the hit TV show RuPaul's Drag Race UK, and journalist Laura Dodsworth. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show, both of you. Well, look, who do you agree with, OK, people? It is a tough one, this, and I think we had a really nice debate there, actually, because sometimes you look at it and you see extreme examples like rainbow dildo butt monkey, which I never thought I'd say on national television, or what's been going on in some places in Dallas, OK, but that's not necessarily the same, is it, as some would say maybe a relatively tame drag performance in a library in front of a load of kids who don't really seem to mind. So there you go. Who do you agree with, though? Are drag queens appropriate for children? Well, Sean on Twitter says no, they scare kids and it's very juvenile to educate children about men dressing up in women's clothes. Ryan on Twitter says whoever votes yes needs their heads looked at. And Kieran on Twitter says yes, drag queens are appropriate for children in the right context, say reading children's books at a school, which they sometimes do. So there we go. And your verdict is now in on our big Twitter poll. That's right. Just 7% of you agree that drag queens are appropriate for children, while 93% of you say no way. One hour down, one to go, people. It's 10 p.m. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Patrick Christys. And breaking tonight, the first flight transporting asylum seekers to Rwanda looks ready to leave imminently. We're bringing you the very latest on that. But following numerous legal challenges, only a handful of passengers will now be boarding. We're going to be going live to that throughout the show. Well, author and historian Leo McKinstry has accused these lawyers of subverting democracy and even suggests that by blocking the Rwanda flights, they are actually on the side of the people traffickers. I'm inclined to agree. It's strong stuff, though. What do you think? We'll debate that next. And throughout the show, we'll see how tomorrow's newspapers cover this historic flight as well, if indeed it even takes off. And until I see it, I won't necessarily believe it. But anyway, earlier today, Nicola Sturgeon announced that she's launching a second independence referendum with or without the UK's government consent. I mean, come off it, Queen Nick. Have a day off. Anyway, well, let's hear from her.
After everything that has happened, Brexit, COVID, Boris Johnson, it is time to talk about independence and then to make the choice.
Goodness gracious me. Anyway, is it time we called out Sturgeon for her political opportunism and, of course, dismal performance in government? I certainly think it is, and so does the brilliant spokesperson for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, John Ferry. He joins me in Uncancelled, and that is at 10:40. After the North Yorkshire town of Whitby bans second homeowners buying up new properties, should other areas in the UK follow suit and do that as well? And why did this British pensioner get such a warm embrace from the frontman of The Killers, Brandon Flowers? That is an absolutely lovely story, that, ladies and gents. You're not going to want to miss that. Somebody told me the answer to that one, and I'll be sharing it with you in our Media Buzz Plus. After Virgin Atlantic become the first UK airline to allow staff to openly display tattoos, could this man be your next flight attendant? That's right, we'll be meeting the groundbreaking tattooed performer Lizard Man, I wonder how he got that name, who wants to see a destigmatisation of all things body art. Do not dare miss that at 10:20. And why have footballers called Gary got under the skin of one of my superstar panellists? I think we all know why, but find out when I crown a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, it's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Thank you very much, Patrick. The latest top story is the European Court of Human Rights has issued an order preventing the deportation of one Iraqi migrant to Rwanda tonight. They'll now stay in the UK until after the judicial review of the government's policy, which is coming up in July. The first flight, though, is scheduled to take off this evening, carrying 6 asylum seekers. That's down from a planned 130. However, the charity Care for Calais says the remaining deportees could also make similar claims to the European Court. Well, earlier on today, senior UK judges dismissed attempts to introduce an injunction to stop that flight. The court's president said if the government's policy is legally found to be wrong, migrants will be brought back to the UK. And asked if it was time to come out of the European Convention on Human Rights in order to see through government policy, the Prime Minister said some laws may need to be changed.
The legal world is very good at picking up ways of trying to stop the government from upholding what we think is a sensible law. Will it be necessary to change some laws to help us as we go along? It may very well be, and all these options are under constant review.
Scotland's First Minister says there's an indisputable mandate for a second referendum on Scotland's independence from the United Kingdom. Speaking in Edinburgh, he said it would allow for a wealthier, fairer and more resilient nation, adding people in her country are suffering from many implications of a Brexit they didn't vote for. Scotland previously held a referendum in 2014 on the issue, with 55% of the country voting against independence. But Ms Sturgeon says the country is more prepared now than it was then. The Foreign Secretary says the EU has absolutely no reason to retaliate against government plans to override the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's threatened legal action if the changes go ahead. Ireland's Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, warned it could destabilise peace in Northern Ireland. The government claims the new rules will make it easier for goods to travel there from Great Britain. In London tonight, several hundred people have taken part in a silent walk to mark the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire. It comes after the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge joined survivors and bereaved relatives, laying a floral tribute to the 72 people who lost their lives in the blaze. Earlier today, the names of all the victims were read out at a memorial service at Westminster Abbey in London. And a 72-second silence was also observed at a shopping centre in West London. Those are the latest news headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, and now it's time to go back to Dan Wootton Tonight with Patrick.
Yeah, well, tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. We always like to be ahead of the game here, don't we? So let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages, hot off the press. And on the front cover of The Eye, we can see that hundreds are still crossing the Channel, despite the developing story that the first flight to Rwanda will take place this evening. The Eye reports that migrants from Syria, Afghanistan and Iraq are arriving oblivious to the fact that they might face a flight to Kigali. Well, my superstar panel are now back with me. Former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star, the one and only Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid as well. Now, a flight due to take the first asylum seekers to Rwanda has been postponed after the European Court of Human Rights granted individual injunctions for 7 remaining people on board. That's according to ITV News' Paul Brand. So apparently the flight to Kigali even was due to take off with significantly less than 130 of the original set on board after various legal challenges were launched to prevent the migrants being deported. So the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has vowed that everyone who was due on this flight will still be on subsequent ones, but the plan's power as a deterrent to criminal gangs has been significantly diminished by the legal victories won by the lefty lawyers and activists this week. Their victories still don't solve the migrant crisis, though. We need to stop these gangs from profiting from people's lives, don't we? More than 250 people had to be rescued while making the treacherous crossing today alone, some travelling in dangerous dinghies, like this partially submerged vessel, for example, that was towed into Dover Marina today. Prime Minister Boris Johnson today hit back against critics of the plan and asked them how they would stop the illegal gangs who've helped move more than 10,000 people across the Channel already this year.
What opponents of the policy have to say is, well, what is your alternative? What is your alternative to people being shipped across the Channel in very frail, unseaworthy dinghies, risking their lives and undermining the rule of law? What's your alternative? I think it's very important that we continue to show the people traffickers that their business case is going to lead, is being undermined, and that they're cheating people.
Right, well, there we go. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, that's a real turn-up. If you are just joining us, yes, you did hear that correctly. I must admit, I was slightly taken aback by it as well. Like, caught me on the hop as much as it did you. But, yes, apparently this flight now has actually been grounded, so it's not going to take off, allegedly anyway, as far as we're aware. Boris also suggested that the UK would consider taking drastic action, like possibly leaving the European Convention of Human Rights, so the government is able to disarm legal challenges to its immigration laws in the future.
The legal world is very good at picking up ways of trying to stop the government from upholding what we think is a sensible law. Will it be necessary to change some laws to help us as we go along? It may very well be, and all these options are under constant review.
Yeah, goodness gracious me. Well, that's kicked off. That is just the very, very latest for us, ladies and gentlemen. That flight that was supposed to take off earlier today, carrying some people who had come over the Channel, will now not be taking off. That's for sure. And that's been cancelled basically at the last minute as a result of various protests and, of course, as well, legal action. And, I mean, author and historian Leo McKinstry was much more scathing of the activist lawyers in a Daily Mail column today. I mean, Leo argues, for example, that the rule by lawyers Boris was railing against. There is a catastrophe for democracy. He says that while also accusing the legal challengers of being on the side of people traffickers, he goes on, should really be feeling the same. For all their posing as humanitarians, they have in effect collaborated with the cross-channel criminal gangs as a consequence of their judicial victory. They've not only given a boost to this evil trade, but have also put more lives at risk on one of the busiest sea routes in the world. Proper progress won't be made while the self-righteous nexus of lawyers and activists continues to have their sway. Well, yes, we are now going to bring in this panel. Calvin, are these politically motivated lawyers now subverting democracy? Do you think they're actually aiding criminal gangs? Is what we've just heard there, the grounding of this flight, a victory for criminal gangs?
Unfortunately, it is, yeah, absolutely. It's shown the government are toothless. They don't have the power to implement these policies, but it's also subverting democracy because immigration is pretty much the #1 cause for people voting Conservative at the moment. It's one of the main issues and has been for the last few general elections. And the government can't seem to do anything about it. We've got these lefty, liberal, activist lawyers undermining our democratic process.
Rebecca, you must be over the moon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased. I like to think that it was largely because they heard what I had to say in the last segment and decided to change their minds. I also think, realistically, if there were only like 3 people on that plane A, how colossally unfair to be the 3 of the 130 who actually got taken. And also, cost-wise, it wouldn't have been effective. It is more practical to ground it and then to actually hash out the legal framework. And it feels like this happened quite quickly, though I have been on maternity leave, so possibly it's actually been talked about lots more than I realised. And what needs to happen is we need to understand what is the actual legality of this, because if it's illegal, then obviously we can't do it.
Yeah, Dawn, look, the government, for their part, from what we can see, I mean, this literally kicked off right before our very eyes a few minutes ago, so we're still digesting it. But as far as we can see, more legal challenges were put in. It was deemed that this flight wouldn't take off. The government are vowing to make sure that everyone who was supposed to be on that flight does end up going. Do we believe in this Rwanda deal anymore?
I think we have to do something, Patrick. I think everybody would agree that we have to do something. Quite what the actual answer is, and let's not forget that we're not the only ones doing this. It has been tried in other countries. Denmark are also very keen to do it. And in 2018, EU leaders had a meeting and discussed doing this very thing themselves. So it's not just the UK that are doing this. Everyone's going, oh my God, you're a racist hellhole. No, we're not. We've actually settled more migrants in this country under the Conservative government than Labour did under Tony Blair. So but we need to do something, but no one knows what the answer is.
It's important that you mentioned Tony Blair there, because, Rebecca, Tony Blair actually wanted to build a camp quite similar in Rwanda in 2007.
I was 16, I was doing my GCSEs, I wasn't that interested in anything other than myself. But I'll take your word for it, I believe that.
Yeah, he was, he was.
I would say that what this needs is a good PR job. Because when you say migrant camp in Rwanda, I'm thinking, ooh, is it bunk beds and steel loos with no loo seats? If it is actually a sort of fairly OK Hilton hotel...
Which is a bit like the one that there's a lot supposed to be going.
Then in which case, we need to see that and we need to understand this isn't a punishment, and we need to get much more of what Dawn said about the fact that Rwanda is a very nice country and do a good PR job on this campaign.
I don't think it needs a PR job. I think the vast majority of the British people will probably support this policy. The problem is the lefty liberals and the activist lawyers who are using the law, the letter of the law, to squirm their way around it. The Supreme Court justice found that there was nothing wrong with the policy, yet they're finding these lawyers are finding ways to swivel around it.
And they're not doing that. This isn't the lawyers being leftist, by the way. This is the lawyers looking after one people and one people only, and that's themselves. They don't care about the migrants. They don't care about what's left and what's right. They care about their own bank.
I'm not sure about that, because as Patrick pointed out in his dialogue, they weren't there when our civil liberties were being taken away. They weren't fighting for our justice then, were they?
I'm inclined to look at that. You know, I will never be OK, I think, with the fact that lawyers seem to pick and choose exactly which issue they get on their high horse about.
We all do that. We all pick and choose which issues we care about and which we don't.
Yeah, but lawyers above all people are supposed to be the ones that are more straight down the line, aren't they? No, that's the ones.
Where did you get that from?
Sorry, but
that's literally not true.
But if Sadiq Khan can come out and say that, oh, you know, when I was representing the Nation of Islam, I was only doing that because you don't pick your clients. Well, now all of a sudden it seems to me like the lawyers are picking a lot of people and coming over the channel.
Generally, if you're a human rights lawyer, you take human rights cases. This is a human rights issue.
But this is the point that Patrick made, that it was a human rights issue that
exactly.
But perhaps they didn't feel it was. That's a matter of opinion to which we are all entitled.
Because they're too lefty.
Okay. If people that clever are lefty, perhaps the lefties are right.
OK, just very quickly.
Those ones are.
We've gone a bit meta there, I think, people. But there we go. We are just stay exactly where you are, because this is, ladies and gentlemen, if you are at home, you're listening on your radio or watching online, you are witnessing a major event taking place right now on this very show. And it is the fact that this flight that was supposed to be going to Rwanda, we've been talking about all day, all week, is now not going. And we're going to cross over live now to our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who is at MOD Boscombe Down. Good evening, Jeff. I mean, goodness me, something's changed. What's happened?
I know, so near and yet so far. The lights came on the runway. We could hear the engine going. We saw them get onto the plane. We saw the pilot doing his last-minute checks. So near and yet so far, because suddenly we're hearing that the engines have cut out. The runway lights have all shut down. So what we're presuming here, we haven't heard anything officially from the Home Office yet, but it certainly doesn't look like this flight is going to take off today. We're hearing that maybe, we know that the one of them, the Iraqi, he went to the European Court of Human Rights, and he was told there that he could stay in Britain until July. We then think that maybe the others have followed suit and also gone to the European Court of Human Rights, because there was nothing distinctive about the Iraqi man's case that made it just apply to him, so it could have applied to any of them. So it does look now as though the European Court of Human Rights has intervened and stopped this from happening. But as I say, we've heard nothing official yet, so we don't really know. But the signs are certainly there. It's all gone very dark and very quiet.
Yeah, look, Jeff, thank you very, very much. Jeff Moody there is on the scene for us. I'm going to go back to the panel now, who have been sitting there. It's important for us to just say, Jeff obviously is in a... Well, he's exactly where this is, but he's in a more remote location than us, and we have feeds here. So we have been told by the Home Office that this flight has been grounded now. So that's that, OK? The Home Office have made it official for us, and so there's no... ifs or buts there. What's fascinating, though, from Jeff's report there, and I'll bring you right in now, Dawn, is that the lights were on this runway. The pilot was doing his final checks, and then, boom, right at the last minute. I mean, this looks like chaos.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, this is actually an incredible story. I mean, a lot of people are going, well, I'll believe it when I see it. And the fact that we've actually got almost taxiing on the runway before it was called off at the last minute. It is quite incredible. So, obviously, there has been some legal hearing going on in the background tonight, and that decision has been made at the last minute. Priti Patel does say that, you know, if they're not on this flight, they will be on another one. So they are still determined to fight.
They were supposed to be on this one, to be fair. Calvin, could this be curtains for Boris, do you think, or Priti Patel at least?
I mean, Priti Patel can say what she likes, but at this point, can she follow through on her actions? That's the problem. I feel sorry for Jeff. He's been stood at that blooming airport all day. Nothing's happened.
No, exactly.
Nice weather, at least.
At least it's been a sunny day. Your reaction to what Jeff said there, right at the very last minute, I mean... I suppose maybe the government have made a calculated decision that it would be more damaging to have these people, if there was still a trial hearing going on, to fly these people out to Rwanda and then have to fly them back again.
There was nothing calculated about this. If I were Boris Johnson, I would have had them get a load of drama students in leather jackets on that plane for a free holiday to Rwanda, and I would have flown them there. Because what he needs right now is a win to the kind of people who are cross with him, and those are the kind of people who don't like migrants. So I would 100% have faked the whole thing.
OK.
We don't like illegal immigrants.
Yeah, illegal migrants is an important distinction.
Sometimes it's hard to tell here.
Do you really think? Oh,
I'm mean tonight.
I'm
sorry.
Back, though, don't you? So there we go. It can't be that bad for you, to be fair. But there we go. But
I need the work.
All right. Well, look, we're going to be bringing you. Yeah, fair enough. We're going to be bringing you. I can tell. No, that was me. That was me. No, right. OK. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to move on briefly from this now. As you can imagine, we are going to be going back anyway to this Rwanda issue. If you're just joining us, one more time for everyone who's sitting at the back. OK, basically, it's just come through that this Rwanda plane is now not going to be taking off. Some last-minute legal disputes, apparently. All too predictable, some would say. Get your views coming in, GBviews at GBnews.uk. Right, OK, but now we're moving on. You'd be mistaken for thinking this was footage from the GB News birthday barbecue at the weekend, by the way, where staff from across this ever-expanding newsroom joined together to celebrate in a completely reasonable way, of course, how far we've come in such a short period of time. And Boris Johnson even congratulated us with a birthday message. There you go, that's something you can get right. Writing happy birthday. A year in, hired great talent, presented new perspectives and served new audiences. But no, as lit as that birthday bash was, this footage is actually from the Killers gig at Old Trafford Cricket Ground on Saturday, and there was something a bit different about the show as well. So, proving you're never too old to let your hair down and rock out, 67-year-old pensioner Doug James decided it was his time to shine with a crowd surf for the first time after seeing fans around him lift a woman in a wheelchair. The stunt sensationally backfired, however, and the elderly man was dropped on his head, causing the Killers frontman Brandon Flowers to stop the concert to check on him. Well, when the rocker returned to the stage after the encounter, he explained he had asked Mr James what he was doing, to which he just replied, I'm enjoying myself. Well, there you go. Mr Brightside meets Mr Upside Down. There we are. Fantastic. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, look, obviously, we've got them hugging there if you're listening to us on radio. I mean, just fantastic stuff. Very quickly, have you ever crowd surfed, Dawn?
No, thank you. No, not to start either.
Calvin, I can imagine you just losing it, mate.
Behave. I'm loving the lack of social distancing, though. That's fantastic
yes,
to see.
OK. Yourself, would you like a good crowd surf?
Generally, it's not advice for women, unfortunately, because people can't be trusted.
To be fair, I can't see that is actually a very good point. That is actually a very, very good point. But, yeah, we've got loads coming up in the show. Still here, and should more tourist hotspots follow Whitby Council by voting that we ban people from owning a second home? My superstar panel and I will debate that in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And next, I speak to the man, the myth, the legend that is Lizard Man. That's right, we discuss if it's time to destigmatise tattoos. What do you think about all of that, people? Of course, if it comes as an airline is going to allow people members of staff to show their tattoos on their airlines. What do you reckon to all of that? Stay tuned and find out what Lizardman thinks.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, OK, now, big stuff, OK. So, a brand new survey has claimed that interest in jobs with the first UK airline to allow its cabin crew to display their tattoos has skyrocketed since the announcement. Internet searches to work with Virgin Atlantic, who are also the first leading carrier worldwide to give a thumbs up to Inc., leapt by 522% on the day that the new policy was confirmed earlier this month. That's according to a leading travel blog. So, does this suggest that we're finally seeing the destigmatisation of body art? Well, there's only one man, rather, should I say, one reptile for it. And he's captured my heart ever since I first laid eyes on his full-body green scale ink work. And, gosh, his forked tongue, the things that the mind boggles, doesn't it? Anyway, go, it's time to meet Lizardman. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Lizardman, how are you?
Hi. I'm great. I'm feeling so flattered now. You've overwhelmed me with flattery.
Well, there you go, absolutely. I mean, so do you find that most people are terrified of you?
Most people are absolutely not terrified of me, but I know that that's mainly a result of me appearing on television shows like this one over the years. When I first started out, I scared a lot of people. But once I had been on sort of Ripley's Believe It or Not and the local news a few times and things like that, people's opinions began to change.
Talk me through why, really. I'm sure that's a question you get asked a lot, but I think it would be strange if I didn't ask it. So, why?
It would be strange if you didn't ask why. That is the obvious question. It's also, one of the most difficult questions, really, because you're talking about, me trying to explain my entire life in a soundbite when you ask why. I can ask, yourself or, anyone on the street, why they do what they do, why they are the person they've done. And I understand it's because what I've chosen to do is so out of the ordinary that people think there's got to be some strange and wild thing. But it really comes down to, as an artist, this worked out as sort of the best way for me to express myself and do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, talk us through some of the things that you've got going on here. You've got something going on with your eyebrows. What's that all about?
Right. So I'll take you through the whole sort of catalog.
Yes,
the most
please
obvious
do.
thing that everybody notices right away is my tattoo, right? But beyond my tattooing, I've also had Teflon subdermally grafted to my skull to create the implants over my eyes. My teeth have been filed down to points via dental drill. And of course, my tongue was the first surgical tongue splitting in history. It was burned in half using a biopsy laser.
Right. Did it hurt?
The actual procedure itself was painful, but not, I wouldn't say, if anything, I'd say less than you would expect for having a laser burn your tongue in half, really. But the swelling afterwards was so intense. That first 48 hours afterwards was some of the worst pain that I've experienced.
Can I ask, and forgive me if this is a bit crass, but do you have certain people find you very attractive?
There's definitely a fetish, whether it be for body modification in general, specific things. The split tongue definitely arouses a lot of interest.
Right, yes, there was some cooing from the gallery outside, I could hear, actually, and it was audible. It was audible from in here, everybody. So there we go. I think I was gone out on telly. Hopefully none of your parents recognise your screams, but there we go. But Lizard Man, just in the bigger sense of it, destigmatising body modification or body art. The cynic in me would say that the airline industry is currently struggling to hire people, and therefore they've had to kind of lower the rules, basically, and say people with tattoos can apply or at least show them. But is this a good step for people like you, so that you'll become more normalised, if that's possible?
Right. Well, I mean, actually, for myself, being a professional freak, being normalized could actually have a very negative effect. And I think you make a fair point when you say that, maybe the hiring bar has been, I don't want to say lowered, but shifted. I think that, and this is something that's been happening over my entire life. I just turned 50. I started getting tattooed in my 20s. And during that entire time period, I've watched tattoos become less stigmatized. I mean, when I first started off, having a tattoo, especially a tattoo on your face, was a big social signal that said, stay away from me, leave me alone.
Absolutely.
And now it's become a matter of, hey, come talk to me about my tattoos.
Look, absolutely. Lizard Man, thank you very much. An absolute pleasure. And I tell you what, another benefit of your full body tattoo is that no one can tell how old you are. I mean, you say that you're 50, you don't look a day over 49 to me, my good man. Lizard Man there, everybody. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Right, OK, well, thank you very much for that. OK, right, well, look, we've got loads coming up your way. Matters slightly more serious than that, of course, but a little bit of light relief never did anyone any harm. No, did it? As Nicola Sturgeon channels her inner William Wallace and cries, freedom! What happened to him in the end? Anyway, for Scotland once again, with a renewed push for a second referendum on independence. Is the First Minister selling her people a pie-in-the-sky dream that they'll be wealthier, fairer and more resilient out of the UK? Well, Scottish Liberal Democrats finance spokesperson John Ferry is uncancelled at 10:40. But next in the media buzz as well, is it right to own a second home? Well, Whitby residents have just voted to ban Londoners buying new build properties. So, should other councils follow suit as well? I debate that with my superstar panel next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, everybody, fast-paced show this. Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. Yeah, more front pages have just dropped. Hot off the press, the Daily Telegraph leads with the Rwanda deportation blocked by European judges at the 11th hour as a Home Office plane sat on the runway in Britain tonight. Meanwhile, Nicola Sturgeon should be forced to wait until 2039 for a second Scottish independence referendum, a 25-year gap since the last one. That's according to calls from Government Minister Mark Spencer. The Guardian also leads with the dramatic news as well that the 11th hour ruling from the European Court of Human Rights has thrown the Rwanda plan into absolute chaos. And in other news, a report that Jacob Rees-Mogg has plans to axe all EU laws in under 4 years, which has resulted in a row within Cabinet about the feasibility of it all. The Sun's out as well now. Again, well, no, not again, sorry, they leave with the exclusive that boxer Tyson Fury is set to make a sensational £200 million return to the ring. That's right, the Gypsy King vowed to box again and declared, "Show me the money," after announcing he's already started training again. He quit the sport in April after his world heavyweight title defence over Dillian White. Not long retired there, Tyson, but I'm not sure many people believed that to begin with anyway, did they? But more on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reed. But as we've been hearing, it's this extraordinary news this hour. I think it... Well, maybe it didn't catch some of you by surprise, but it certainly did right here for me on this show. Government sources have confirmed, sensationally, that due to last-minute interventions by the European Court of Human Rights, all migrants have been removed from that plane and the flight to Rwanda will not take off as scheduled tonight. And before we go to that panel, we're going to get the views of a couple of big-name guests on this. I'm joined now by the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Good evening, Richard. So, hey, it looks like these activist lawyers, or indeed the Europeans, have won the day.
Good evening, Patrick. Well, I guess many of us probably are not that surprised, but it is truly, truly shocking. I mean, let's just evaluate what's happened here. We had the High Court approve the deportation flight. We had the Court of Appeal and then the Supreme Court of our great sovereign nation all say the government's plan was legal, lawful and should go ahead. And then from overseas, from some far-flung place, another court, a European court, a foreign intervention, got no right whatsoever to interfere with this, has essentially stopped this. The truth is, ironically, this actually will suit Priti Patel and Boris Johnson down to the ground because they can use this as red meat for their base. I put out a tweet this evening, Patrick, there's no question at all, this country should withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights with immediate effect. That is Reform Party policy. And until we do that, we are essentially trapped by a foreign court over which we have no say whatsoever, and which is essentially a political court. It's disgraceful.
Right, I mean, yeah, obviously as well, it's Boris Johnson blaming the EU for this. And, I mean, I suppose this does, as you alluded to there, essentially maybe lead to a Reform Party policy becoming mainstream, as it were, because actually now I suppose people are saying, well, hang on a minute, if we want these flights to Rwanda to take off, then we have to get out of some of these European laws and rules and regs, don't we?
Yeah, and many of us thought that that's what we were achieving with Brexit. But unfortunately, what this has proven is that they just can't help themselves, can they? Okay. They just want to continue to interfere with an independent, proud, sovereign nation, and we shouldn't put up with it anymore whatsoever. I would expect Priti Patel or the Prime Minister to make a very, very clear, firm, robust statement. And if they don't, then what does it say about their real intentions, their real commitment to stopping these horrific crossings across the Channel, which is what we all want, of course.
Well, it is, and actually, again, I'm convinced that I know we've had a little bit of pushback on that from one of our wonderful panellists this evening. Don't get me wrong, and it's not a uniform view across the UK, Richard, but absolutely, I'm convinced it passes the pub test up and down the country. You walk into the vast majority of pubs, and people want these flights in the air. Richard, thank you for coming on at such short notice, and I'm sorry it's short and sweet, but as you can imagine, we've got loads to rattle through here. Although, to be fair, I just heard that we've lost our next guest, so you know what? We'll stick with you, Richard. There you go. There you go, Richard. You can stick around for a little bit longer. In the meantime, Richard, we know what's going to happen, don't we, Richard? We know this is going to be used as bait, in a sense. We're going to see thousands of people coming across the channel in the next few days alone, surely.
Look, the whole point of this policy was to act as a deterrent. That has now gone completely smashed to pieces on the Dover Cliffs. And as you say, it's a license for the vile people smugglers to accelerate their plans, to say to all of the potentially illegal migrants, come quickly, come now, we'll charge you an extra premium to get in early, and you'll be across and you'll be safe in the comfy, cosy 4-star hotels of the United Kingdom. So no, it's very, very bad news for all British taxpayers, all of us who want to have lawful, sensible immigration, who want to stop illegal immigration.
Right, I think you hit a great point. We said that the lefty lawyers before were potentially on the side of the people traffickers. They might be about to make the people traffickers even wealthier now. But, Richard, thank you very much. It is, this time, very much goodbye, my good man. There we go. Richard Tice, there you go, is the leader of Reform UK. Panel time now. Dawn, I'm going to come to you. This has settled in a little bit more now. Do you think, actually, that seriously what we're going to see now is just a flocking across the channel in a way that we haven't seen before?
Absolutely, and this has coincided with a period of very good weather. So, as we know, when you've got good weather, more people come across. The French do absolutely nothing to stop them, Patrick. They don't want them to be stopped. They want them to make that crossing. And so the French are complicit in risking people's lives in this way. I mean, just stop the boats leaving, and that would sort out people dying in the channel. Okay. And can we not forget that the EU have been sponsoring Libya to intern refugees in camps for the past 20 years? So, I mean, all this European court thing.
They've been paying Turkey.
They're all as guilty, if not worse than
They've been paying Turkey on the Syrian border as well. Look, I'll just come to you and bring in Rebecca now. Are you still ecstatic about this? Are you not concerned now this is going to make human traffickers wealthier?
I mean, I wasn't ecstatic about it. I was pleased about it.
Right.
I think there is absolutely a problem with the human trafficking. I have no question about that. I suppose my stance would be, I think your stance might be that you should make it harder to get into the country. I think making it easier, undercutting people traffickers, if it were cheaper to do it legally, presumably most people would prefer to. So I think if we made it more accessible and more affordable, then we would probably stand a better chance of getting rid of people trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin, your reaction to what you just heard there...
It's astonishing. Why even have borders?
I don't really believe in borders. Have I never had this conversation with you?
It's outrageous. I mean, what are we if we're not a nation with borders? Then how do we determine what we are, who we are?
Just live and let live, chill.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work in reality.
One of the main things about this was it's supposed to be deterrent.
Yeah, but once you've tried it, there's no going back, is there?
If the government isn't going to implement the policy, which it should have done regardless of the International Human Rights Court of Law, they should have gone ahead with it anyway. If they're not going to do it, it won't be deterrent. Okay. And what we're going to see is more and more people dying as a result of this.
OK, all right. I mean, Dawn, this is the tragic reality, isn't it? I wonder how these lefty lawyers and people like that are going to feel when they see more dead bodies being fished out the channel.
They're going to have blood on their hands, aren't they? I think that's the answer to this. That is exactly the situation we're in now. We are going to see more people dying in the channel. And as you keep saying, lefty lawyers, I mean, they're just lawyers. They're just getting richer on the deaths of people who are risking their lives crossing the channel.
In a way, is it cruel? Go on, Calvin. Yeah.
I just think there is another option. We could turn the boats away, force them back to France. Let's stop bringing people over. Let's stop helping the people smugglers. Let's be a deterrent in our own waters.
I mean, that's at least more green than this Rwanda thing. The Rwanda thing feels that's a more sensible, straightforward solution, isn't it?
Thank you.
Well, better than flying them to Rwanda.
You know one thing I must say? I was absolutely not expecting that. So you're more in favour of towing boats back, potentially, to France?
Taking them here, putting them on a plane, flying them thousands of miles away, assessing some paperwork in a country they've got no connection with, and then potentially, sending them back to somewhere else?
The sensible solution would be to work with France to set up a processing centre where we could make sure that legal asylum seekers are treated fairly and welcomed in this
An
country.
Ellis Island type
The
thing.
French
You were right.
won't do
You were
that.
right. The French won't. We pay them, what, 50 million a year?
Yeah.
We
And
should
the fact
stop doing that 'cause they hate
and
us.
also to address your point, there are many people that do go the appropriate route, many people that asylum seekers that do go the legal route, and they get bumped off the list by the people.
Yeah,
that
and
do
I think
illegal.
that's a real shame. I'm not saying that I think the system's perfect.
Just quickly, one more before we get going. Calvin, I'm concerned now that this is going to kick off with the EU again big time because, OK, it's not the European Union's court, as it were, but, it's not a million miles off. We've got the Northern Ireland. We've got the Northern Ireland protocol issue taking place as well. We've got Keir Starmer saying that if he stands at an next election, he might decide to he will decide to renegotiate our Brexit deal. Are we back in 2016?
We never left, did we? That's the problem. The British people have made it clear time and time again that we want to address immigration and we want to leave the jurisdiction of the Europeans. And we haven't done either of those yet.
No, we haven't. Anyway, right, OK. Well, look, just to clarify, the decision to block the asylum flight this evening was due to interventions from the European Court of Human Rights, which is not officially part of the European Union. Of course, the European Court of Human Rights is part of the Council of Europe, which is a separate body of which the UK is a signatory member. Right, OK, so coming up, the crowning moment of the show, as I actually do, yes, genuinely crown today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Next, though, in Uncancelled, is Sturgeon, the Bruce selling Scots a pipe dream of independence with claims that the country would be wealthier, fairer and more resilient outside the UK. Scottish Lib Dem finance spokesperson John Ferry has some stern words for Sturgeon's selfish pursuit of a second indie rep. He's here next, just after we take a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show. Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight with me, Patrick Christys. As a head teacher at a single-sex school says that she will no longer call pupils girls, Helen Joyce, author of Trans, When Ideology Meets Reality, will weigh in on the latest gender madness. Plus, there'll be unfiltered opinion from columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle and Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill. That's going to be box office. And I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel, media personality Christine Hamilton, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. right here on GB News. Right, OK, well, let me just bring in research and immigration specialist at the Bow Group think tank, Benjamin Loughnane. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, huge news right here, live on this show, which was that flight that was due to take off to Rwanda is not going anywhere. A last-minute intervention, apparently, from the European courts. Benjamin, your views, what does this mean for the Rwanda plan going forward?
Well, when the plan was announced, I actually said straight away it will never happen, that flight will never take off. And the reason it will never take off, and I said this at the time, is because of the ECHR and because of the Human Rights Act. While we have those two legislative barriers to enforcing our borders, nothing can be done. And when the government come out with any plans, whatever they are, it's a distraction tactic. It's about solidifying their base around this issue because they know that the electorate really care about these channel crossings and they want to see something being done. But as long as they make it look as though something's being done with a plan like Rwanda, when it eventually doesn't happen, they can turn around and blame the lawyers and say, oh, well, all the lawyers, we tried to stop it, but the lawyers didn't let us. Well, the reason the lawyers didn't let you is because you haven't changed the law, which is something you very much have the power to do, but no political will whatsoever.
Are you absolutely terrified about what stuff like this might mean for the future of this country? The numbers of people coming over on the channel alone that we are not allowed, apparently, to deport pretty much. And certainly when we are allowed to deport them, it doesn't allow we're deporting them anyway. Do you think that we'll wake up in 20 years' time and we just won't recognise this country?
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, I wrote yesterday that this plan, if it doesn't go ahead, if the plane doesn't take off, if it is stopped, it will be emblematic of British decline. It will show that we've lost the ability to even enforce our own borders. It's such a basic thing. If we don't even have the power to enforce our own borders, what do we have the power to do?
No, indeed. And I suspect, Benjamin, that we're going to see a lot more mostly young men hot-footing it across the channel, having parted with a couple of extra £1,000 worth of their cash to human traffickers, who can now, far from being deterred by the Rwanda plan, can actually, ironically, charge a premium.
Well, they said that the Rwanda plan is a deterrent. The Rwanda plan failing is the opposite of a deterrent. It's an advertisement. The human traffickers will be going down the beach of the Calais tonight saying, look, the Rwanda plan's not happening. Get in the boats. You'll be in by morning and you'll never be sent back or anywhere else.
No, indeed. What do you think Boris Johnson must be feeling right now? Because I tell you what, this could be a blow for him, couldn't it, really? A big blow.
Well, I hope he isn't feeling surprised, because no one else is surprised. Anyone who knows what's going on knows that this was never going to happen. The lawyers would step in and the law would prevent it from taking place. So presumably he knew that as well.
I think it might be referendum time. Hear me out. I know, the last one took it out of all of us. But I'm sorry, we have to get this sorted, because I'm convinced that it's a fringe minority of often very white people from quite leafy parts of the country who, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, the second they have kids, move to a rural location so their kids don't tend to have much ethnic diversity in their own schools, right, for example. These are the people who are shouting and screaming and rattling the can, or a few idiots with blue hair in Peckham. This is not the vast majority of the British public.
No, it's a very, very vocal minority who have the luxury and the time to go out and glue themselves to motorways and do other such silly things, while the rest of us actually have to work for a living and get on with our lives. We don't have the time and the luxury to go out and make these ridiculous protests. It is a very small minority of very vocal people who really are out of touch with the rest of the country. Most of the country want to see this dealt with, not because we don't want to help refugees, not because we are necessarily against immigration, but because it's a heinous breach of our law and order to breach the borders in that way. We're effectively saying that we have no borders. If you want to come in, just go down to France, jump in a dinghy, you'll come across and be put up in a 4-star hotel, clothed, fed, looked after, and never sent back to where you came from or to anywhere else. It's just saying, look, Britain is open to anyone who wants to come.
Do you think that the people who are calling for exactly this kind of thing to happen right now, as far as I can see, they don't care about how much money this costs. As far as I can see, they also want a load more money pumped into things like the NHS, to our education system. They probably want everyone who works in our transport system as well to have an 11% pay rise. Actually, is it that these people just don't care about money and they don't care about skinting this nation?
I think they probably genuinely believe that they're good people doing something very good and benevolent and welcoming in people who are suffering and struggling. But let me tell you, these people coming over are not suffering and struggling. They're not fleeing war. They're fleeing France. And look, I've said it before, if I were in France, I'd want to leave France and come to England too. But that doesn't mean we have to let everyone in the world in. We just simply do not have the space or the resources. We already have a struggling NHS. We've got a recession on the way. We've got people who are struggling to make ends meet in our own country. Charity begins at home. We have to deal with those issues before we open our arms to the entire world.
Yeah, and I mean, I tell you what, I'm going to have to look into this right now, but it depends, I think, as well, very much on whether or not we've already paid Rwanda in full, because if we have, then we're not getting that back, and nor should we. It's not the Rwandans' fault, OK? The government, I think, was doing us a bit of a favour. All right, it cost us a lot of money. They were getting well remunerated for it, Benjamin, but at the same time, they were still doing us quite a nice thing. So we've lost that money. And just very lastly, Benjamin, before I let you get going, I think we might be staring down the barrel now of migrant villages, asylum seeker villages, illegal immigrant villages right across the UK, like what's going on in a place in Yorkshire, because that's the only way I can see us having the capacity for this lot.
Well, look, when you see them coming across in their hundreds every day, it doesn't seem like such a huge number. But since 2018, it's been 50,000 people who have come by that route alone. That is a huge number of people. And all of those people at the moment, they're being kept in these hotels and camps and all the rest of it, or barracks. But over time, they're being trickled out into communities across the country. And yes, you are going to see small villages which change irreparably beyond recognition as these people are housed there. Because let's face it, they're not going to Rwanda.
Been like Nain, as ever, thank you, and thanks for coming on at short notice and reacting to what is arguably one of the biggest news stories that we've had in a very, very long time right here, of course, on GB News. But look, hey, people, it's time now for Uncancelled. This is, of course, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, this morning, Nicola Sturgeon announced that she is confident that Scotland can hold a second independence referendum without the permission of the UK government, speaking at Bute House in Edinburgh. The Scottish First Minister launched a new campaign for independence, with a first paper titled Wealthier, Happier, Fairer, Why Not Scotland? And, well, I've got loads of reasons for that, Nicola, but anyway, there we go. And despite promises that the referendum in 2014, just 8 years ago, would be a once-in-a-generation vote, scheming Sturgeon claimed to have a fresh mandate for Indie Ref 2.
After everything that has happened, Brexit, COVID, Boris Johnson, it is time to set out a different and better vision. It is time to talk about making Scotland wealthier and fairer. It is time to talk about independence and then to make the choice.
Yes, well, there we go. OK, and obviously our Prime Minister says there simply isn't time for another referendum. But and I understand it as well that Nicola Sturgeon has tweeted to express her pleasure, I believe, about this Rwanda deal being banned as well. Nicola Sturgeon has... excuse me, gosh, yeah, I know. I nearly choked on my words there. There we go, there's the tweet saying that obviously she is deeply pleased, of course, about what's been going on in terms of the Rwanda flight being blocked. She says it's an inhumane deportation attempt. Well, there we go. But we're going to be joined now by spokesperson for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, John Ferry, no stranger to the nationalist spin, of course. I'm just going to go to him straight away, actually. There we go. Look, John, thank you very much. We're slightly overtaken by events here, my good man, this evening, but this is the news game, I'm afraid. Look, can I just start you off on this Rwanda stuff? I mean, Nicola Sturgeon wanted this. Does this mean that Scotland's going to be housing millions of these people? Because someone's going to have to.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for having me on. So I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian too, I'm afraid, compared to your other guests earlier. I think there's very clear and sensible solutions to the refugee and migrant crisis, which is to provide safe routes to the UK and to engage in the geopolitical process in a positive way, so that we can neutralise the real aggressor in this, which is Vladimir Putin, who is sending waves of refugees into Europe as a political tactic and a geopolitical tactic to in his war aims. So I would simply say to your guests from earlier, if they could direct some of their aggression that they seem to have towards refugees and migrants towards Vladimir Putin and his aims, I think we would probably all fare much better. So that's my position on this.
Look, you're entitled to your view, absolutely. I think a lot of people, excuse me, were disappointed. Well, obviously, a lot of people are disappointed to see this flight taken off. And I think the fundamental lack of solutions from most people anyway, from certainly most people in frontline politics, to what is clearly a huge problem, i.e. the channel and wider levels of illegal immigration, refugees, asylum seekers, etc. Any lack of other policy, I think, really opened the door for the Rwanda policy. But there we are. Just very quickly then, because we are almost bang out of time. I'm so sorry, John. I know you've been sitting around waiting for a while. But Sturgeon's Indie Ref 2 attempt, is this going to get off the ground at all, do you think?
So there's clearly not going to be a referendum next year. The political and the legal context around this shows us clearly that there's clearly not going to be a legal referendum. Nicola Sturgeon's tactics in this is to keep her troops, if you like keep dangling that carrot in front of them and keep them on side so that she can progress as a politician and progress her party and not lose support for her party. But she must know that there's not actually going to be a referendum. We're in the midst of numerous crises just now. We've got the post-COVID recovery crisis in our NHS. We've obviously got the cost of living crisis. People are focused on that. The people in Scotland clearly do not want there to be a referendum next year. That's very clear from polling. And so, for those reasons, together with the legal reasons in that she doesn't have the power to actually hold a legal referendum, there's clearly not going to be a referendum.
But the idea that... Sorry, just quickly, shouldn't she be careful for what she wishes for? Because then, dare I say it, she'd have to be held to account for her own actions in that country. Is she actually fit to run an independent Scotland?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you look at the growing list of calamities that the Scottish Government have got just now, we've had the census a few weeks ago, which was maybe your viewers in England haven't picked up on this so much, but Scotland decided to go its own way in doing its census a year later than the rest of the UK, and it's completely messed it up. The SNP government simply could not administer that. Cost it over 150 million, and it's been wasted pretty much. We've got the ferries fiasco, where we've got elderly people on our Western Islands who, for the first time in their lives, do not have a lifeline ferry service to the mainland, which must be quite scary for them. That's due to SNP incompetence. And there's a series of other things, or NHS or education, where the SNP is serially failing the people of Scotland. And this all points to, in a technocratic sense, Nicola Sturgeon and her colleagues simply not being able to pull this off if they ever got it.
John, you're going to be a man in demand on this channel going forward, I'm sure, because this is an issue that's not going away anytime soon. As Nicola Sturgeon announces, of course, that she wants Indie Ref 2. That was Scottish Lib Dem finance spokesperson John Ferry. Thank you very much. Now, just about got time to say thank you to my superstar panel, who were on top form tonight. I mean, the show was very, very fast-paced, to say the least. Former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. People, thank you so much for tuning in on what has been a massive, massive news night for Britain. I'll be back covering for Dan Wootton tomorrow and indeed for the next couple of weeks. Take it easy, people.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Tomorrow we'll bring more of the same, more strong sunshine for most of us, a little bit warmer than today. And again, the UV and grass pollen levels are likely to be high. It's not going to be dry and sunny everywhere. However, we've still got some rain across the northwest. That'll continue on and off overnight across the Highlands, the Northern Isles and the Western Isles. But elsewhere, we will keep largely clear skies. Rural spots could drop down to single figures, but mostly we're looking at 10 or 11 to start Wednesday. And we'll start with plenty of sunshine for England and Wales, and many will stay that way throughout. A bit more cloud again for the west coast of Scotland. Rain at times over the Western Isles and spreading into the Highlands. We may even see 1 or 2 showers for Northern Ireland, but few and far between here. Most of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland's brighter and warmer than today, and certainly further south in the sunshine, temperatures ticking up by a few degrees. 28 is possible in the London area. As always, coasts will be a little bit cooler where we see some sea breezes developing. A balmy evening to come then through Wednesday evening, staying fine and dry for the vast majority. Just a threat of 1 or 2 showers for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Certainly we'll keep some outbreaks of rain going in the far northwest, but otherwise a dry and fine start to what will be an even warmer day for many of us on Thursday. Again, still some cloud for western Scotland, perhaps a bit more for Northern Ireland. A bit of patchy rain trickling in here at times, but for most places, dry, hazy, very warm, strong sunshine. Temperatures more widely across England and Wales into the mid-20s. 29 is possible in the London area, and 23, 24, of course,